Hello everybody, my name is Owen, and welcome to the 9th episode of Magic Monday, where I talk about anything and everything related to the popular trading card game, Magic the Gathering. Right now, I'm in a bit of a pickle. I'm completely out of ideas. Of course, I could always do another deck tech, which I'm not entirely opposed to, they're pretty fun to make, but I just did one for episode 8, and I also don't have any more decks to talk about. Because of this, I'll be doing something a bit silly this week, and ranting all about my top 5 least favorite commanders. I'll be keeping this episode short, since I don't imagine that me whining and complaining about pieces of cardboard has much appeal to the masses. Regardless, I hope you enjoy this week's episode. The number 5 spot is going to be split up between, funny enough, 5 different commanders. These are going to be the 5 Sliver commanders. Slivers has to be one of my least favorite tribes ever, with the commanders being the worst of the bunch. The idea of putting any given annoying ability onto a creature that gives other creatures said annoying ability is, needless to say, pretty annoying. If I had to choose between my least favorite out of these 5, I'd have to pick the first sliver, since it basically reads whenever you would cast a sliver, cast that many slivers, plus 5 instead. The only thing keeping these guys at the number 5 spot is the fact that Slivers is a super expensive deck to build, and thus you don't really see it that often. Number 4 spot goes to Krark the Thumbless, specifically when he's paired with Sakashima as his partner. Any deck using Krark as the commander is going to have about a billion different ways to copy his ability, and since it's a non-deterministic ability, you have to sit there through every single painful coin toss. This commander takes non-deterministic combo to the extreme in the worst possible way, and usually results in 3 concessions as soon as Expropriate is played. He's dull and boring and too easy to play, and he embodies everything I really dislike about Izzet. Number 3 would have to be Atraxa Praetor's Voice. I foresee that I may get a bit of pushback for putting her on my list, but just hear me out on this one. Atraxa is mainly put at the head of 2 archetypes that I really dislike a lot, them being Super Friends and Infect, and she's way too powerful in both of them. Super Friends is definitely the lesser of the 2 evils here, as she has a much smaller impact than she does in Infect. Still, if your planeswalkers aren't already ulting as soon as they enter the battlefield, she heavily expedites the process, and provides protection since she's a 4/4 with 4 powerful abilities. She's even worse in Infect, as she basically puts your opponents on a 9-turn or less clock. Her colors also allow you to put powerful cards into decks that you wouldn't be able to otherwise, which is quite annoying. Maybe if she wasn't so good in decks that aren't really fun to play against, she wouldn't be as bad, but unfortunately, she is. The number 2 spot goes to Kenrith, the Returned King. I don't really think that anybody is going to be complaining about him being on this list, because he's here for a pretty obvious reason. Most of the other commanders on this list I dislike because of what decks they're commonly paired with, but Kenrith is a bit different. I dislike him not because he's commonly found at the head of any particular deck that I really dislike, but rather because of the card itself. My biggest issue with Kenrith is his versatility. Usually being versatile is a good thing to have in a commander, but with Kenrith, you start to see some problems. His wide array of abilities and his 5-color identity mean that you can replace any commander with him, and he can do what that commander does, but better. There are a few exceptions, such as tribal decks, or decks that rely very heavily on a specific commander's ability, such as Brutaclad, but a lot of the time the upsides that he introduces are worth the loss of a slightly better ability or synergy. Of course, this idea doesn't really hold up in the real world, as people will always play whatever they like the most, regardless of whether or not Kenrith may provide a slightly better ability than what they're currently running. It's more the idea that the card represents that puts him this high on my list. And finally, for the moment you've all been waiting for, number 1, the first place award of my least favorite commander is Urza, Lord High Artificer. This guy holds the number 1 spot as my least favorite commander for one primary reason. Because the goal of any given Urza deck is to help your opponents have the least fun possible. I know that this is true for a lot of different decks, but Urza is definitely the most efficient, and the one that I have the most experience playing against. The sheer effectiveness of Urza as an anti-fun commander is truly astounding, whether it be tutoring for Winter Orb on turn 2 and locking the game in place forever, or going infinite on turn 5 and playing your entire deck. No matter what, if Urza is winning, nobody else is having fun, and that is why he's my most hated commander. Now that I'm done complaining, I'd like to take a second to tell everyone that this list is just my opinion, and it's based solely off of my experience with these cards. If you don't like something that I said, feel free to tell me. I won't be super butthurt if you don't like one of my takes. So, to no one's surprise, the video ends. I hope that you liked this week's episode, though I don't exactly expect you to. This was kind of just something that I wanted to do, regardless of how much people like it. If you did, in fact, agree or disagree with one of the incoherent takes that I rambled about in this video, please tell me in the comments below. Also, feel free to like and subscribe. A bit of encouragement might serve me well. So, to all of you still here, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.